Geto and Gojo were the strongest sorcerer at the time, both of them being special grade. They were able to do whatever they wanted to do. Only Yuki and Tengen at the time could have possibly won against one of them. But if Gojo and Geto teamed up, no other sorcerer had a chance. They were best friends, but beyond their friendship, Gojo and Geto had completely different worldviews. Geto had high moral standards. He cared for the non-sorcerers and was convinced that the task for sorcerers was to protect the weak.
Survival of the weakest, that's the proper shape of a proper society. Jujutsu exists to protect non-jujutsu sorcerers.
Gojo was the complete opposite. He despised the non-sorcerers, even saying they slowed down the strong ones, and he hated the hypocrisy of moral people like Geto.
Looking out for the weak and protecting them is honestly so exhausting.
But on one point they had the same views. When Geto and Gojo got the task to protect the Star Plasma vessel, they came to the same conclusion, that Riko Amenai should decide by herself if she wants to sacrifice her life for Tengen or if she wants to continue living her life like she wants to do. Geto even said that it's okay for Riko to decide this way because he and Gojo are the strongest.
We're the strongest students at Jujutsu High School, so no matter what decision you make, Satoru and I will guarantee your future.
Gojo and Geto were ready to fight against the larger part of Jujutsu society, including people like Yuki, Tengen herself, Gakuganji, Utahime, Meimei, and so on, just to back up their moral views. They were able to assert their views because they have the strength to fight against everyone. But not only would they risk to fight against nearly all sorcerers, they also risked for Tengen to evolve, which would include consequences on their own. But then there was Toji, the anomaly, the outsider, the dropout, the opposite of Gojo Satoru, having non-cursed energy and still being one of the strongest because of his heavenly restriction, not obeying rules, only doing what he wants to do, and that is making money. I won't talk about how Toji's action started the whole story from Jujutsu Kaisen, but the important point here is that Toji's intervene started the descent of Geto. Geto was totally convinced that he and Gojo are the strongest, and that they can win against any curse or sorcerer. But Toji, in a very brutal way, showed that Geto was totally wrong. Geto couldn't do whatever he wanted to do, and he clearly wasn't the strongest. Toji humiliated him, leaving Geto no chances to win. The monkey with non-cursed energy won against the strongest. The devastating loss to Toji was the reason why Geto's character started to break. Geto lost his purpose. He couldn't protect the weak. He lost without having any opportunity to win, and all that while being convinced that he's the strongest. On the other side, we see awakened Gojo, being completely over the top with his new gained abilities. Red, purple, reverse curse technique, automatic and always activated infinity. Geto is nowhere near Gojo anymore. Geto starts to question society, the purpose of sorcerers, and if it is worth taking all the losses, pain and humiliation to protect ignorant people, which aren't even aware of what is happening around them. The weak, or how he starts to call them, monkeys, aren't aware of what they are to blame for. They just live life without being in control of their cursed energy. Them being unconscious is the reason why curses even appear. Geto wasn't as strong as he thought, and it wasn't easy anymore to have the noble values he always said he had. The values he stood for up to that moment were bound to his strength, giving him the control of everything. Even if someone appeared to challenge his views, he would have simply won against him. To understand better what I mean, for example, the goal to do something against the higher ups is a good goal, because they only care about themselves. If something gets too dangerous for them, they just want to eliminate it, as it was with Yuta or Yuji. Not seeing their potential, only the possible danger for them. Gojo is by far the strongest, and he knows how corrupt the higher ups are. He thought multiple times about just killing all of the higher ups.
Maybe I ought to just cut to the chase and go kill off all those higher-ups.
And for him it would be easy with no real consequences. He could just go in there, cast a domain, and every one of the higher ups would be dead. And if anyone wants to fight against him afterwards or before, he just one-shots them with either blue, red or purple. Now, if Kusakabe and Nanami would have the same goal as Gojo, it would be way more dangerous for them and also more difficult. Because the higher ups would simply hire skilled sorcerers to eliminate them. or manipulate missions like they did with Yuji. Kusakabe and Nanami can't just go in there and one-shot all of them like Gojo. For them, it is way harder to stick to their beliefs, doing something against the corruption, because there are way more hurdles and consequences. And that's what Toji did to Geto. Toji was the consequence. He was the confrontation for Geto of the brutal reality of not being strong enough to easily assert your values. Geto's personality started to crush. The defeat to Toji was the opportunity for Geto to prove himself that he still backs up his values, even if he isn't as strong as he thought, even if he failed his mission and saw the brutal murder of Riko, even if he hadn't had a chance to beat Toji, but he failed. Geto lost weight, he looked unhealthier, he didn't sleep well because he lost his purpose. For him everything seemed meaningless. He was in a constant tension with himself. On the one hand, he started hating ordinary human, aka non-sorcerers, but on the other hand, he's still a working student for the Tokyo High, still exercising and absorbing over and over again. Yu, Aibara and Yuki represented the two sides of the conflict Geto's in between. On the one side, Yu Aibara, the student of Nanami, very enthusiastic, excited, optimistic and happy, but also subservient to the way the Jujutsu world functions. And the other side is Yuki, special grade, one of the strongest at the time, but not taking any missions and not following orders like a sheep. She created an higher ideal which she's working for, not fighting the symptoms but the origin of the problem. Yu Aibara is what Geto was all the time. But now, after he experienced the traumatic events around the Star Plasma mission, he moves towards the way Yuki is already on, fighting the origins of the problem and not the outcome. When people are at their lowest points, they are susceptible to simple solutions. In Geto's case, when he had his talk with Yuki, she explained to him what her goal was, and he was totally captured by her way to stop curses. She offered a way, not fighting the meaningless symptoms which always repeat themselves, but to fight the cause, and trying to create an ideal world where curses don't exist.
You want to treat the cause?
Rather than hunting cursed spirits, I want to create a world where they don't get born in the first place.
The death of Yu Aibara is the last event Geto needed to let go of everything he had up to that point and to fully commit to his new goal. With Yu's death, old Geto also died. His idea of killing all non-sorcerers is obviously idiotic. Because then, if we only talk about Japan, he must kill approximately 125 million people. But that goal gave him a purpose. Now he's able to sleep again and had motivation to keep going. Life isn't meaningless anymore. In his final talk with Gojo, before Geto leaves all his old friends to solely focus on his new goal, he asked the question.
Do you think you're the strongest because you're Satoru Gojo? Or are you Satoru Gojo because you're the strongest?
There are many really good explanations for what Geto meant. Now I want to share my explanation in the whole context I think about Geto. Are you strong because you keep your values, or do you keep your values because you are strong? Gojo can do whatever he likes to do, because there is nobody to stop him. What if Gojo loses his strength? Is he still able to back up his beliefs? Does he still want to change the Jujutsu society? Does he still want to create the strongest generation of sorcerers ever? It's a valid question, because Geto, who was in the same situation, clearly couldn't do that. He fell into despair. I won't discuss the situation with Gojo, because he ultimately doesn't give an answer, and in my opinion isn't even supposed to do so. The person who actually answers the question is none other than the main character, Yuji Itadori. Yuji was randomly thrown into the world of curses, jujutsu, cursed energy, abilities, etc. Yuji was definitely naturally strong, but in comparison to the actual strong characters like Kenjaku, Yuki, Jogo, Sukuna, Mahito, Gojo, and so on, he was weak. But he always kept the values close his grandpa gave him on his deathbed.
Yuji? You're a strong kid, so try to help others. Save the people you can. Even if it's only those closest to you. It's okay if you lose your way, and don't worry about whether they'll thank you or not. Just save as many as you can, even if you could only save one.
Yuji's values aren't bound to his strength like it was with Geto. Yuji always was a good person. He wanted to protect as many as possible, being 100% selfless. He loved and cared for the people around him. Yuji from early on accepted his role. Another difference is that Yuji accepted what Geto couldn't, the endless cycle of curses. For Geto it was meaningless to go around and exercise curses. He needed a higher goal to find motivation to keep going. Yuji, in his fight with Mahito, accepted that he doesn't need a higher purpose to kill Mahito over and over again. No matter how often and in which forms Mahito or any other curse will return, Yuji will kill him.
I'll just kill you. And if you're ever reborn again as a new curse, I'll kill you then too. Change your name and appearance, I'll still kill you again and again. I don't need meaning or a reason anymore.
If we compare the trauma Yuji went through compared to Geto, Yuji had way more reasons to become like Geto. Yuji felt responsible for all the victims in Shibuya caused by the domain expansion from Sukuna. Then he saw how Mahito killed his mentor Nanami and Nobara. But nonetheless of his own weakness or the brutal reality of the world he lives in, where curses like Mahito just go around and murder humans for fun, he kept his values until the very end. Now we will go to manga territory, so if you haven't read the manga, you should probably leave the video now. Spoiler warning. Yuji until the end saw himself as a cog, simply fulfilling his purpose, and that was dying after eating all 20 fingers. But in his final talk with Sukuna we see that Yuji changed. He valued life beyond a purpose. Even if you just eat and sleep, or you're sick in bed, even there are little fragments left on in memories, which maybe one time slide away, but there lies the value of life. For Yuji, it doesn't matter if you're weak, a monkey, a sorcerer, a non-sorcerer, or the strongest. Life itself has intrinsic value, and he despised the people not acknowledging that. Yuji in the last arc finally became one of the strongest. He's now capable of blood manipulation, reverse curse technique, simple domain, domain expansion, and has his own version of shrine with soul dismantle. Yuji is clearly in a league with Yuta and Hakari now, and the gained strength is his way of answering the question Geto asked. Yuji became one of the strongest because he kept his values.